Welcome to the mythical creatures.
As we delve deeper into the world of Dryads, their mystique becomes even more fascinating. Their existence within the realms of myth and imagination transcends simple folklore, weaving them into the very fabric of ancient belief systems, where the natural world and the divine were often intertwined. To the ancient Greeks, Dryads were far more than mere figments of fantasy. They were the very embodiment of the sacredness of nature. Their myths reflect a world in which trees and forests weren't just natural resources to be harvested. They were living, breathing entities deserving of reverence and care. The Dryads' connection to trees, particularly sacred groves, was an integral part of ancient Greek religious practice. Many groves were considered sacred to the gods, and these places were often under the protection of tree nymphs. Cutting down a tree or damaging a sacred grove without offering prayers or making sacrifices was not only seen as an act of sacrilege, but also as a violation of the divine order. Such acts often had consequences, as the myths tell us, and the gods did not take lightly the harm inflicted upon nature. This idea of the sacredness of certain natural spaces highlights how Dryads, in many ways, functioned as intermediaries between the mortal and divine realms, embodying the concept of nature as a divine force that demanded respect. Beyond Greece, tree spirits similar to Dryads appear in the myths and folklore of many other cultures. In Celtic mythology, for instance, trees were often believed to house spirits or serve as conduits for supernatural forces. The Celts held trees in the highest regard, especially the oak, ash, and yew, which they considered to be sacred. In Celtic lands, trees were sometimes called Cran Bethad, or Tree of Life, and were believed to connect the heavens, earth, and underworld. Like the Dryads of Greece, the spirits inhabiting these trees were considered guardians of the forest and protectors of the balance between the human world and nature. The Norse had their own version of sacred trees, with Yggdrasil, the world tree, being the most famous example. Yggdrasil was said to connect the 9 realms of Norse cosmology, with its roots extending deep into the underworld and its branches reaching up into the heavens. While Norse mythology doesn't specifically mention tree nymphs like Dryads, the idea that trees hold immense spiritual power and that they are living, breathing entities with their own forms of consciousness is a concept that resonates across many cultures. In Japanese folklore, there are also spirits known as kodama, similar in nature to Dryads. These tree spirits are believed to inhabit ancient trees, and cutting down a kodama's tree was considered an act that could bring about a curse or disaster. In Japanese Shinto belief, the forest itself is seen as sacred, with many shrines built within or near groves, echoing the Greek idea of the sacred grove. Trees are regarded as living beings that house kami, or gods and spirits, making the destruction of a tree akin to an offense against the divine. Returning to the Greek Dryads, one of the most significant aspects of their mythology is their role in the stories of love and desire. In many myths, Dryads are depicted as objects of affection or lust, often pursued by gods or mortals. These stories, while often romanticized, also contain deeper themes of nature's power, resistance, and transformation. Dryads, much like the natural world itself, are portrayed as beautiful and alluring, but also untamable and resistant to domination. Take, for instance, the myth of Syrinx and Pan. Syrinx was a beautiful nymph associated with the forests and was often depicted as a dryad. Pan, the wild god of the woods, fell madly in love with her and pursued her through the forest. Fleeing from Pan's advances, Syrinx prayed to the river gods to save her, and in response, she was transformed into a bed of reeds, just as Pan reached her. Devastated by her transformation, but still in love, Pan cut the reeds and fashioned them into a flute, the famous Pan flute, which became a symbol of his eternal love for Syrinx. This myth reflects the recurring theme of transformation, found in stories about dryads and tree spirits, where nature itself resists being controlled or conquered. Transformation in dryad mythology often serves as a metaphor for the power of nature to adapt and survive. Just as Daphne was transformed into a laurel tree to escape Apollo's pursuit, Syrinx became reeds to evade Pan. These stories suggest that while nature may be threatened or pursued, it cannot be entirely overcome. Instead, it changes form, adapts, and endures in new ways. This concept speaks to a broader understanding of nature's resilience, its ability to renew itself even in the face of destruction. The theme of transformation and rebirth is also mirrored in the seasonal cycles of trees. In autumn, trees shed their leaves, appearing to die, only to bloom again in spring. This cyclical process reflects the enduring nature of life itself, which is constantly renewing and evolving. Dryads, as personifications of trees, embody this idea. Their fates are tied to the life cycles of the trees they inhabit, and their stories often reflect the seasonal transformations of the natural world. In ancient Greece, it was common to leave offerings at the base of trees believed to be inhabited by dryads. These offerings were a way of showing respect and seeking the favor of the tree spirits, especially in matters of agriculture and fertility. Farmers would pray to the dryads for a bountiful harvest, while those who sought to clear land or harvest wood would make offerings to ensure they did not incur the wrath of the spirits. This practice reflects a deep-seated belief in the interconnectedness of humans and nature, where the health and prosperity of the land were directly tied to the respect shown to the natural world. The reverence for dryads and the trees they inhabited can also be seen in the ancient rituals performed in sacred groves. These groves were often dedicated to gods such as Artemis, Demeter, or Dionysus, and were considered holy places where humans could commune with the divine. In these groves, priests and priestesses would perform rituals to honor the spirits of the trees, and it was believed that the dryads would watch over these ceremonies, ensuring that the natural balance was maintained. Interestingly, the connection between dryads and fertility extends beyond agriculture and into the realm of human life. In some myths, dryads were said to be able to bestow fertility on women or to influence the outcome of childbirth. The belief that the spirits of the trees had power over life and death speaks to the ancient understanding of nature as a force that both nurtures and destroys, a duality that is reflected in many of the myths surrounding dryads. Despite their often elusive nature, dryads were not entirely separate from the human world. There are several myths in which dryads fall in love with mortals, and in some cases, they even bear children with them. These stories illustrate the delicate balance between the human and natural worlds, where the boundaries between the two are fluid and interconnected. In some versions of these tales, the children of dryads and mortals are blessed with special powers or an unusually strong connection to nature, emphasizing the belief that humans, too, are a part of the natural world and not separate from it. One of the most touching myths involving a dryad and a mortal is the story of Philemon and Baucis, an elderly couple who showed hospitality to the gods, Zeus and Hermes, when they visited their village disguised as beggars. As a reward for their kindness, the gods transformed their modest home into a grand temple and granted them their wish to die together. When their time came, they were transformed into intertwined trees, an oak and a linden, standing side by side for eternity. While this myth doesn't explicitly mention Dryads, it carries the same themes of transformation and the deep connection between humans and the natural world. In modern times, Dryads have continued to captivate the imagination. Their legacy lives on not only in literature and art, but also in contemporary environmental movements. As the world becomes more aware of the importance of conserving forests and protecting ecosystems, the Dryads' role as guardians of the trees feels more relevant than ever. They symbolize the fragile beauty of nature and the urgent need to preserve it for future generations. In many ways, Dryads have evolved from mythological beings into symbols of environmental awareness. They remind us that the natural world is alive, vibrant, and deserving of our respect. Just as the ancient Greeks believed that harming a tree could incur the wrath of the gods, today's environmentalists warn of the consequences of deforestation and ecological destruction. In a world where the forests are shrinking, the Dryads' message is clear. We must learn to live in harmony with nature, or risk losing something precious and irreplaceable. So, the next time you walk through a forest, pause for a moment. Look at the trees around you, and remember the ancient myths of the Dryads who once inhabited them. Though we may no longer believe in tree spirits in the way the ancient Greeks did, their stories still resonate with us, reminding us of the deep, sacred connection between humanity and the natural world. The forests are more than just collections of trees. They are living, breathing ecosystems that house a delicate balance of life. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you listen closely enough, you might hear the whispers of the Dryads, watching over their trees, as they have done for millennia.
Thanks for watching. It will be nice to see you again in the world of mythical creatures.